Good evening and welcome to This Week in Review. Tonight's stories include the BDDB report, the upcoming CFCB radiothon, is it a blue heron, a white crane, or an egret? We have the answer. These stories plus community events, the BBS Playbill, Off the Rack, and more coming up after this.
Matching mothers is to help the mother deal with it.
Once we got over the shock of Kevin being born without his left hand, we contacted the War Amps.
I phoned the War Amps back and asked them what it was all about, and they said it was totally up to me if I wanted to call this mom.
They said, would you mind if we set you up with another parent who has gone through a similar thing?
When I phoned Karen the next day, we were on the phone for a long time.
I'd always ask her questions about Kelly, how she's getting on doing this, and like tying her shoes.
Matching mothers is a good thing right from day one.
On our last week's broadcast, we showed you some pictures of a white bird. Lots of people had an opinion as to what kind of bird it was. Earlier this week, one of our viewers brought in the answer. It is a great egret. It is a type of white heron with a yellow bill, black legs, and black feet. The great egret stands about 28 inches tall. It was first spotted this year on September 13 after Hurricane Gustar blew over Newfoundland. These birds range from the United States to South America, with the Boston area being the furthest region in the great egret's travel. When we get the privilege to see one of these birds, we know that they are quite a long way from their normal flight area. Now over to Greg Hilliard with the BDDB report. We have with us in our studio today Greg Hilliard, our BDDB officer, and he's going to be bringing us up to date on some of the happenings at his office. And welcome again, Greg.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be here.
And it's great for you to be here. And we'll start things off with the Tourism Committee.
Yeah, as people in the community know, for the last almost 2 years now, there's been a local tourism committee, and of course they've been involved in the development of various different initiatives in the community to promote and enhance tourism. Last year, you might recall, we had our first annual tourism dinner, and of course our guest speaker was the Honourable Minister for Tourism, Culture, Recreation. It was such a success that the committee decided to do it again. So right now we've got scheduled for Friday, November 15th. We're going to have our second annual tourism dinner. And our guest speaker is going to be Mr. Jerry Murphy, who's certainly a fairly well-known radio personality, and he's also the chairman of the Festival Coast Tourism Association. The event is going to be held at the community centre, and we're having a pan-fried dinner, and of course there's going to be a dance to follow. Last year we kind of had a social, and a lot of people that attended said, "Ma, it would have been nice to have kind of a full night event." So we are planning to have A&A play that evening, and of course as part of the whole weekend activities, we're also planning a training seminar for Saturday, bringing in Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador to put off a tourism training program, a half-day, full-day seminar to again promote tourism. The whole idea behind it is really community-based tourism awareness and the benefits of getting involved in tourism. This past year, again, we saw a major increase in the tourism traffic in the Burgeo region, and what a lot of people don't realize that these people are bringing in brand new dollars in the community, and for every dollar that's spent, there's a $5 spin-off. And that means basically if there's a new dollar brought in here, it goes around the community 5 times before it leaves again. And there's major spin-offs that happen in regards to bringing that tourist traffic down to this community. So we certainly noticed the benefits of it, and the board has, and the committee, and we feel that we need to continue enhancing and exposing the benefits of tourism in this region of the province. So one way to do that is have this annual dinner, bring in some guest speakers, and now we're to the point that we'd like to provide some enhanced training programs for people and businesses that are involved directly in tourism-related industries in this community.
Very good. Next on the list is our sea urchin incentive.
Yeah, it's something that we haven't talked about in a very long time, and that's basically due to the fact that, as people in the community know, we've been working for over 2.5 years to develop a sea urchin processing facility in Burgeo. Our business plan and proposals have been submitted to various government agencies, and we ran into a major hang-up sometime around March or April, whereby the Department of Fisheries and Oceans brought out their policy that was created in 1992 and said that they would not recommend any funding agency to get involved in assisting with the development of any processing facilities in Newfoundland and Labrador. Now that policy was put in place in '92, at the same time the moratorium came into effect, and in relationship it was done mainly for the ground fishery. However, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans have decided to kind of use that as a blanket policy for all types of processing development, including underutilized species. So this past week I had the opportunity to meet with Jerry Byrne, who's the Minister for ACOA. I was very pleased with the meeting, to the fact that he came out and reiterated our thoughts, and that policy was in place only for ground fishing processing facilities, and that if this province is to survive in the fishery, then we need to start diversifying and looking at things like underutilized species. He was very pleased to see the work that we had done in terms of resource identification programs, partnering with 3 other zones in terms of trying to access their resources, sea urchins, being involved with an industry partner in the East Coast of Newfoundland who's been involved in this industry for upwards of 10 years, and technology transfer and those kinds of things in the overall business plan. And he's basically taken upon himself and made a commitment that he's going to be discussing this issue with representatives of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and basically trying to get the proper interpretation so we can try and move on with this. We feel that it's unfortunately late this year to get involved in it. However, our goal is whenever we can get the financing put in place to develop this facility, then get it all ready and geared up for next year. It's our last kick, I'll be quite honest with you right now. If the Minister for ACOA doesn't come through for us in terms of trying to reinterpret, if you want, the policy set by Department of Fisheries and Oceans, then our board has nowhere else to go. The bigger issue of this, and I expressed it to the Minister, was that if we identified a new resource such as sea urchins that's in this region, and it is, the biomasses are there to start in, nobody can argue with it. What happens to communities like Burgeo, who know right now we can't get in the crab fishery, the ground fishery is where it is and probably going to go backwards. If we can't diversify and get involved in some other underutilized species, then there's nowhere for us to go in terms of the fishery. We're basically out the door, and I expressed that very clearly to the Minister. My other frustration and our board's frustration came in that throughout this 2.5 years, we received a fair amount of funding from agencies such as ACOA and DFA and support from DFO to investigate this underutilized species, and now all of a sudden when we put an initiative on the table, who everybody says to us, this is really good, but we have a policy here, then what does that say and mean at the end of the day? Again, we go chasing ghosts for no reason. They keep you occupied just to kind of keep you out of your hair. And I said that to the Minister. I said, you know, don't have our board spend 2.5 years working on an initiative when you guys already know, or somebody knows, that, hey, when it's not going to go anywhere. And we felt that it was very unjust. And I must say, Minister Byrne was I won't say sympathetic, because that wasn't the word. He was very understanding and committed himself to basically move forward. I must say, at the same time when we arranged the meeting with Mr. Byrne, I got a call from ACOA representatives that actually at the same time I was meeting with Mr. Byrne, they were also meeting with representatives from DFO to discuss this very same issue. So whether or not it coincides for whatever reason, I don't know, but certainly that was a very positive move, because for about 4 or 5 months I was trying to push, or our board was trying to push ACOA to meet with DFO to say, look, you know, get this straightened away in terms of the policy. So hopefully within the next few weeks we might hear something very positive. Mr. Byrne did say to contact his office again if they didn't contact us, and we look at it very positive. One other issue related to this is we've been supporting the Bay of Islands up in the Corner Brook region with their resource identification program, and they've notified us just recently that they found some major resources of sea urchins as well. So when we start looking at the overall picture of what's happening here, we think that we have potential for a very viable seasonal industry in this community, whether some people believe it or not. But if we don't diversify and look at things like underutilized species, we might as well start forgetting the fishery altogether. The ground fishery is going. We can't get into the crab. We've been after allocations of shrimp for ages. I mean, the only alternative right now is to try and get into some of this stuff. And you talk to local fishermen, they're finding it harder and harder all the time to get the regular quotas of ground fishing net. So, I mean, that tells people something again. And, I mean, these people are trying to make a living, and the only way to do it is for us to try and assist them in looking at underutilized species and whatnot. So, to us, we figured that this is a key area.
Very good. So, obviously, it's not a big issue. There's still a little bit of glimmer of hope there.
Well, I think everybody, you know, one thing I'll say to this whole issue, Marie, is that, you know, every agency we've talked to, the business plan have been put in place since last October. Everybody that we've talked to says, listen, you've got everything taken care of. You know, all your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed. There's nothing we require, but this policy is standing in the way. And now everybody recognizes that the policy was originally put in to basically stop the development of the ground fishery in terms of processing plants because of the moratorium and whatnot. But unfortunately, it's kind of taken that next step whereby, you know, some agencies, particularly DFO, have decided that we're just going to, it's a blanket policy now. And I think if that's changed, or I won't say change, but I mean if it's the interpretation is put in place for what it was meant to be, and then we can get on with the development of such things as the sea urchin development, then yes, we can move forward very, very steadily and very quickly in that area, and hopefully in other areas, because I mean we have done some work in things like whelk and hagfish. There is potential markets for those, but like I told the minister, you're not going to get the bilberries of the world and other big processors to come down this area, because the profits on that are very, very marginal. Our profits are in creating the jobs. We've already done a business analysis that in terms of sea urchins, we'll be fortunate to make a profit at the end of the day of probably $25,000 to $50,000. The bilberries of the world and the quinlins and the dailies, I mean, they're into millions of dollars a year. They're not into these peanuts, I'll call it that, from their perspective. But from our perspective, we can create a nice community-based business opportunity that will make some money and employ a fair number of people on a seasonal basis, and hopefully at a fair wage at the same time.
That's right, and keep more of our residents at home.
Well, and that's the bottom line.
Exactly. Yeah. Next we have the linkages program. I know you guys are beginning another one.
Yeah, we have Teresa Peterson, who's our coordinator, is actually going to be the coordinator for the linkages program this year. We had Claudette Night last year, but she's employed and involved in other activities. Claudette's done a fantastic job for us, and I was talking to her just recently, but Teresa is certainly well versed in the linkages program, and certainly been involved in implementation of different programs and that before, so we feel that Teresa will certainly do a bang-up job when it comes to this program. We do have a space for 4 clients in it. We've already gone out and advertised for different businesses and organizations in the community if they want to support this initiative and take an individual for a 26-week period. And we just finished the information session last week, and we had 5 individuals that attended. We do have 4 spaces, so we're in the process now of kind of doing an evaluation. If all 5 of them look like they're good candidates, then we have no problem going back to HRE and see if we can secure the funding to accommodate all 5 individuals, if that's the case. But the program will start with an orientation session beginning next week, and then the week after, actually, these individuals will be placed in the working environment within the communities. I must say there was 3 from at the information session. There was 3 from Burgeo and 2 individuals from Ramia that showed a fair amount of interest in it. So, and as far as our program went last year, there were some major successes come out of that. So it's one of those programs that show results at the end of the day, and that's what we're into in terms of trying to work with these youths and move them forward in their career development plans.
Okay, very good. Now, our home energy program, is that still on the go, or?
Yeah, it's still set. We, at this point in time, since the first presentation I made on the BBS and the court put the ad on, we right now, out of the 50 potential slots, if you want, available for free assessments, we have 37 households and owners in Burgeo that are expressing interest in getting involved in the program. It is still scheduled to start on October 15th, and we'll run through with the final assessments and, of course, the reports presented to people by roughly mid-December through the ECO team. And, of course, just today I dropped you off a video that explains the whole program and the premise probably a lot more than I could, obviously, from our perspective. So hopefully people will tune in and get the opportunity to kind of see that, and if they haven't registered, then it might give them more insight into what the program's all about and its goal and its activities. We do have, by the way, in the office brochures and information. If people are still a little bit hesitant and not sure what the program's all about, they can give us a call and we'll explain it, and we can provide them with some of these pamphlets that'll probably explain it a little bit better for them before they make that final decision whether or not they want to get involved in it. But right now we've got about 12, 13 slots left available out of 50, so we're very pleased with what's happening so far.
Now, you had another interesting thing on your list there is the Royal Commission on Newfoundland and Confederation.
Yeah, I guess you're probably aware, and some people in the community are, that the provincial government, through committee cabinet, have appointed a commission headed by Mr. Vic Young to really, the bottom line is to look at Newfoundland's place as it relates to Confederation. We received a 2-page brief on that, and they're actually going to be traveling throughout the province in the next number of months to receive briefs from groups, organizations, and individuals and how they feel Newfoundland's place in Confederation has been in the last 50-something years, as well as what their vision of Newfoundland's place in Confederation will be in the future. Some people think it's an exercise in futility. What's done is done and never to be changed no more. Other people feel it's the opportunity to look at past mistakes or past missed opportunities, and to, if possible, make some corrections for the future benefit of the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Our board has discussed it. We will be taking some of our thoughts and comments to a zone board meeting that's going to be held in the next week or so. And what we've agreed as a board, that any comments we have, we're going to try and get them incorporated into a full zonal presentation, because we feel it would carry more weight and more validity if we did it from the zone board perspective, as opposed to the BDDB going out and doing their thing and somebody else. That's not to say an individual can't go and make a presentation, or for that matter, they can do a written submission. They don't have to show up to Stephenville and do a formal, face-to-face presentation. If they got thoughts or comments, then all they've got to do is put them down on paper and send them into the Royal Commission on strengthening Newfoundland's place in Confederation. I think, if nothing else, an opportunity for people to voice where we were, what we've been doing, and where people's vision is where Newfoundland should probably be going in terms of the future. I mean, there's been a lot of hoopla about our resources being reaped and lost, and all we've got is a few jobs, and all the benefits are going somewhere else, and it's continuing to happen today and tomorrow. Then certainly I think it's an opportunity for the average Newfoundland and Labradorian to voice their concerns about where Newfoundland should be overall. So our board's a little bit excited about it. I know I'm excited about having the opportunity to kind of voice some thoughts from a personal level as well.
And next on the list is short-term project proposals.
Yeah, it's, I guess, that time of year. We've had a number of conversations with our MHA in regards to short-term funding for projects. Usually at this point in time, the provincial government comes out with some type of employment emergency response program or short-term projects, and our board discussed it at our last meeting. Talked about things like the continuation of widening I wouldn't say widening the road, but brush cutting along the Burgeo Road definitely is a major concern right now. It's not only a hazard to the trucking industry, but it's getting to be a major hazard to just the general public that are traveling that road. It's getting closed in big time. We also talked about the potential of putting in some snow breaks in various areas along the Burgeo Road where you get the snow drifts, and it's been proven to be very viable in other parts of Newfoundland. And that's that yellow fencing, if people have ever noticed it when they drive through certain areas of the province, actually cuts down on the drifting and that. So we feel that might have some potential benefits to work with work services in that area. And of course, right now, what I've encouraged the board is to determine if there's any community-based initiatives in terms of enhancing infrastructure or opportunities within the community. Having said that, we don't know for sure if there is going to be any funding coming down. We plan to be meeting with our MHA in the very near future to discuss those couple of initiatives we have in place, and to see if, in fact, we can get some short-term projects happening right now. And of course, the twofold would be to make people EI eligible. We've had a number of calls from individuals that are short X number of hours, and hopefully we can not only accommodate that, but obviously, as I mentioned before, we want to have projects that are going to be beneficial to the community as a whole, and enhance the community at this point in time. So we are looking at those opportunities, and be meeting with our MHA in the very near future to see what's happening.
Okay. Lots of good things happening in your office.
Well, we're trying.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you would like to add?
The other thing is, and we've had a notice out a number of times, and I don't know if it's apathy or people don't understand what the role of our board is. God only knows. We have a frustration. I mean, I said to somebody one day, I've been here for 3 years and the board's been in existence for 5, and we keep looking around to say, what have we created and what haven't we created? Where can we improve and where can't we? And what jobs have we actually really put in the community? And somebody said to me, well, there's a lot more than sustainable jobs, but my perspective is, at the end of the day, I mean, that's what it's all about. You can talk about human resource development and all these other, sometimes I call them fluff things, but I mean, they are important to the community as well. But really, I mean, the board and myself are only as strong as the individuals that sit on it. We do have three vacancies right now of a 9-member board, and we've tried a number of ways, the personal approaches, I guess, from board members, and we've put the ads out. We've had a couple of inquiries, but certainly we encourage individuals in the community to become involved. If it gets to the point where people in the community don't feel that there's a need for the office, need for the development officer, I guess that's something that can be evaluated. Then by not having that board and individuals in the community involved, it certainly sends a message as well. Personally speaking, I'm not worried about how we do business and what we do. We do the best we can, what we got, and we know it's slow. But it is the type of board where you can facilitate discussion, debate, and you can actually move some things forward and have the opportunity to sit around a table and try and guide in some way the direction of where we would like to see the community go in terms of economic development. We know it's slow. The sea urchin's a prime example. I mean, something that we told everybody from day one that, you know, can be done and should be done. And but then when you start working with the various different government agencies, departments, and bureaucrats who haul out policies and that kind of stuff, it's never an easy chore, and it is a lot slower than people like myself like it to be. But sometimes you have to work within the system, which is fine. Other times the frustration comes in. But you know, the board's only as strong as the community and the individuals in it, and I certainly encourage people that you know, if they want to get involved and even just to find out what it's all about. I mean, they can come, sit down, observe a couple of meetings. If they don't like it or feel it's not for them, I mean, they can just say, sorry, it's not for me, it's not something I want to do, and go about the things. But we certainly encourage people to think about it, and all they have to do is contact a member of the board or phone our office and say they'd like to attend the meeting.
Okay. Well, we certainly thank you for joining us and filling us in on some of that, and at your office.
My pleasure, and hopefully after summer's over now, we'll get back to doing this again on a regular basis after our regular board meetings. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. On Thursday of this week, we received a media release that states, Healthcare Corporation announced plans in case of doctor job action. The Western Healthcare Corporation is advising the general public that they may experience lengthy wait times in emergency rooms and possible delays or cancellations of elective procedures at facilities throughout the Western region if physicians withdraw services as planned at midnight September 30th. The Newfoundland and Labrador Medical Association, which represents doctors in the province, has indicated that if services are withdrawn, physicians will not participate in the provision of a full range of medical services. It is anticipated that private offices will close and some specialists may postpone all non-emergency hospital clinic patients. According to the Newfoundland and Labrador Medical Association website, there will be no disruption in the following services. All emergency departments will remain staffed at the same levels as before job action. All obstetrical patients will be followed without disruption. All patients in hospital will continue to be medically covered as before, and there will be no disruption in medical care for patients who are on a course of treatment if there is any risk that this may cause harm. This may include cancer, psychiatric, or palliative patients. The corporation noted that if service withdrawal occurs, the following measures will be taken. Patients appearing at emergency rooms will continue to be seen in order of medical priority. Elective surgeries may be postponed. Booked appointments for clinics in corporation facilities may be postponed, and previously booked diagnostic and laboratory procedures such as X-rays and CT scans may be postponed except for inpatients and emergency room cases. Ellen Kendall, President and Executive Officer of the corporation, noted, if the withdrawal of service goes ahead at midnight on Monday, we expect our emergency room, especially the Western Memorial Regional Hospital in Corner Brook and the Sir Thomas Roderick Hospital in Stephenville, will see greatly increased traffic. So we ask that the public be patient. Stay tuned for more of This Week in Review coming up after this.
Vimy Ridge, Hong Kong, Dieppe, Caen, Cap Young. I'm Cliff Chatterton of the War Amps. Never Again, a series of 30 videos about the Canadian volunteers who fought these wars. Learn about the Newfoundlanders in Gallipoli, about our campaign of mountain warfare in Italy, why a Canadian battalion in Korea earned a U.S. presidential citation. The War Amps, preserving our military heritage.
CFCB Radio will host their annual radiothon for the Western Regional Hospital Foundation. On October 4th and 5th, CFCB Radio will broadcast its 12th annual CFCB Radiothon. All money raised during the two-day event will assist the Western Regional Hospital Foundation's annual appeal. The Calder Healthcare Center is included in the Western region and has benefited from this annual appeal. For example, The Calder Healthcare Center was given a cardiac monitor and a portable defibrillator. The list of 18 pieces of medical equipment was determined by the Regional Medical Advisory Committee. Some of these items on the list include a 3-chip camera for OR, a blood pressure monitor for babies, microscope replacements, equipment for examination rooms, equipment for ambulances, and equipment for emergency departments. Because we don't pick up the CFCB radio station in our area, many residents were not even aware of this annual appeal. The staff at the Calder Healthcare Center felt it was very important that we knew about this event, since our hospital is part of this region. Each staff member at the hospital donates $5 and calls the pledge in as one sum. They challenge other groups, organizations, and individuals to do the same. The radiothon takes place on Friday, October the 4th, and Saturday, October the 5th. If you would like to make a pledge, call 634-3111. Remember, your pledge will help the Calder Healthcare Center as well as other hospitals in the Western Healthcare Corporation. The telephone number to call and make your pledge is 634-3111. On Wednesday of this week, our MHA, Calvin Parsons, dropped by our studio for a short visit. We have with us in our studio today our MHA, Calvin Parsons. Welcome, Mr. Parsons.
Nice to be here again.
Yeah, it's been a while, actually.
A little while. I was down here, but I was on the Burgeo Road. I spent a few nights in Peter Strides with the Burgeo people in August.
Oh,
so
very good.
I did my business up around the campsites.
Some R&R.
R&R.
You're in town today for a special meeting. You care to comment on that?
Yes, we had a proposal put to council back in June, July sometime from Work Services Transportation, who run the highway services here. A couple of issues. First of all, who was going to be responsible for the roadway that runs through Burgeo from the wharf to out of town. And then the second piece was who they wanted to change their setup that they currently have at Peter Strides. In fact, they wanted to move the camp and move the personnel and the equipment around. And that proposal was given to council. Council considered it and decided that they thought it was a good proposal, and they wrote Work Services to say that back in August, early August. After that, there were some concerns raised by some people who used the road a lot, for example, ambulance operators, trucking companies, and so on, as to what were the details involved. So we asked Bill Spencer to come to town today. He's the Western Director for Work Services and Transportation, and the person who could explain this. So we had a meeting, and Mayor Ham was there, Councillor Reed, Councillor Grant, and Searle was there as well, Councillor Warren. And there were representations there from the ambulance operators and some of the trucking operators. Tony Warren was there, was one gentleman I recall. So Mr. Spencer explained the situation, the details of the proposal as to what operators were going to be where, whether they would be at this end of the highway, who was going to be at Peter Strides, the fact that there's a contractor going to be hired as well that would operate at a Peter Strides. So he explained the situation to the parties that were there, and council confirmed their decision that it is a better idea, and it will of course lead to better service rather than any decreased service. But at the same time, it will also lead to a couple of extra jobs here in the Burgeo area, which I thought was a very beneficial spin-off. If we could keep the safety elements that we have associated with the Burgeo Road in the wintertime, if we can keep the service levels up to what we need it to be, and at the same time accomplish a couple of jobs on this end of the highway for Burgeo, I thought that was certainly a win-win situation. So those parties who are regular users of the highways, day in and day out, certainly heard the proposal now, and they had no big problems with it. We all agreed that implementing a new system may have a couple of quirks on the beginning, and that everybody's prepared that we got to work through the quirks, but the overall proposal sounds very solid and to the best interest of Burgeo.
Very good.
And we assured them that if it didn't work, we want to go back to the level of service that we know we had before this. So increased service, fine, but reduction is not on and not acceptable.
So the Peter Strides, I'll call it station in there.
The camp.
The camp in there, that is not going to
The
be...
camp will be shut down.
Okay.
The materials will still be there. The salt and the sand will be there. There will be two pieces of equipment there. There will be a flyer there, and there will be a loader there. but there's also going to be outside contractors hired who will be at the camp or be somewhere up in that vicinity. They have to find their own accommodations, whether they bring in trailers or they rent from someone or whatever. But they'll still have the system whereby, in the case of storms and that, for example, you got the contractors who will be working on the road from Peter Strides to Burgeo, same as we have now, except instead of work services personnel doing it, it'll be done by a private contractor.
Okay. And we'll have some on this one on this end going in.
The workers that would normally be stationed in Peter Strides will now all be stationed here in Burgeo, and the work will commence from here out in the mornings. And it'll be done on a periodic basis. It won't be a case of everybody leave at 7 o'clock. They'll be stationed. In fact, instead of starting at 7, they're going to start at 5. So one person will hit the road at 5 with a flyer, and then the other person will follow an hour, hour and a half behind that, so that you've got constant moval on all ends of the road.
Whenever the need arises.
As and when the need arises, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Anything on the fish plant? Anything in that area going on that?
Haven't heard a word. The last meetings we had, of course, were back some months ago now. We put it to the parties involved, the unions. I met with the unions, was the last move that I had, and said, look, if you people got any solutions to offer, by all means come forward with them. I've spoken to Bill Barry as recently as August month and asked him if there was anything in the works, and he said there isn't. It's the old continuing issue of resource, and there are no resources, and he said that's it. He has no new news to tell me, and I haven't heard from anyone who has any proposals that might change that outlook. So on the actual fish plant owned by Barry's and Seafreeze, no, there hasn't been any discussions. Now, there's certainly been a lot of movement regarding Seacrest, which is currently involved. We've been working for some time, Mayor Han and myself, to have discussions with Seacrest, who are currently one of the major buyers in this area, and the fish that gets landed in Burgeo gets purchased by Seacrest, trucked out, and processed in other places, sometimes like Hermitage and Galtus and so on. Hermitage, I believe, being the big one. So our concern was, if we can't identify a new resource to get the plant working, at least the resources that get landed here should be processed here. So that's how we approached the matter. So we went to Seacrest, which was owned by a gentleman, Percy McDonald, at the time. I believe there's been a change of ownership, but the principal manager there is still a guy by the name of Steve Noseworthy. So we went to approach them. They said, yes, if you could provide a facility, we'd be prepared to get a business plan underway that would see the fish landed at Burgeo, processed in Burgeo. So with that in mind, we went to the Department of Work Services and Transportation, which owns the wharf on the shed. There's the shed on the wharf down here. And there was a couple of things in the works, because the BDDB were working on proposals to use that shed for some economic initiatives that they had underway. As well, there was some indication they wanted a way station for passengers who used the ferry service. So between the jigs and the reels, the BDDB, the council, and myself went to Work Services and said, we believe we can accomplish all of our goals at the same time if we play the cards right. So Work Services agreed to turn the facility over to the town. In addition to that, I was fortunate in securing funding from Industry, Trade, and Rural Development, which I happen to be the minister right now, so that was very helpful. And the plan is, of course, to put an extension on the shed, because in addition to Seacrest activities, these economic initiatives and the way station by the BDDB were still current and are still current. So we didn't want to do one thing and jeopardize another. We went to try to have a facility that could accommodate all of them. So we've secured that funding. The memorandum of understanding has been done between Work Services and the council. Council has got their memorandum in place between themselves and Seacrest as recently as last Friday, I believe. So that's been worked out. The shed is now under the authority and control of the council to use for economic development purposes for the area. And the money's been secured to do the enhancement that we need. We needed some power improvements in terms of electricity. We needed some trenching for water and sewer and so on. And of course, we've got to build the actual physical infrastructure extension. So that money has now been secured as well. So hopefully now it's up to Seacrest to, as the product becomes available and the resource hits the wharf, to get the place in shape, do the leasehold improvements that they have to do there, because they have to comply with certain inspection regulations and environmental protection regulations in order to make it a processing facility. And their intent is then to process what comes over the wharf here in Burgeo, what can be done here, to do it here at that facility.
Now, you said earlier that those fish that's landed here now is going to two other communities. So what kind of impact would that have on those? Will that make a big difference? Will we come back again and say, you know, go back to the, you know, our history? We know how it is. Like, yes, you got it. No, you don't. And then somebody.
Again, Seacrest has got to make a fairly substantial investment in the facility in order to make it into a processing facility. I don't see how they would make that investment. It's fairly major dollars we're talking, and then turn around and not bring the resource here. I mean, I could see it if they might not take it from anywhere else to put here, but the case we have here is they're taking Burgeo product to do here. So if anybody's going to suffer the brunt of this, it would be the Hermitage plant that is currently benefiting from, say, Burgeo resources. That may no doubt cause some disagreements from the Hermitage people, but you know, from day one I've been fairly upfront and straightforward with the operator, Seacrest, and with the member from that area, Oliver Langdon, that, you know, what's coming ashore in Burgeo should be processed in Burgeo. And I don't mind. I don't anticipate a big argument on that one, because really I don't think they have much ground to stand on to argue against us on it.
Okay. So it's very positive.
Very positive. We were fortunate. A lot of players came to the table here. We had council who were very active, involved in this, and Mayor Han. We had Work Services, Minister Percy Barrett on side. Jerry Reid, the Minister of Fisheries, was on side. The Industry, Trade, and Rural Development Department was involved here. So there was a lot of people doing a lot of things, and fortunately we managed to piece the puzzle together, and we're to the point now where bring the fish and do some processing here.
Very good. Now, I know this is probably a federal issue, but it's one that's very, I should say, alive and well in this part of the neck of the woods, and that's taking custodial management of the nose and tail of the Grand Bank and the Flemish Cat. Now, I haven't heard you have anything much to say on that, so where do you stand on that?
I guess the provincial position has been stated by Minister Jerry Reid, and that is, of course, that we should take, there should be custodial management of nose and tail and the resources that's on it by Canada. And we're all aware, of course, with the NAFO situation, where NAFO, which consists of about 36 countries from around the world, set up rules to decide who's going to fish and where and how much they're going to take. And quite frankly, NAFO has not been working, hasn't worked for years, and when it has been working and implemented, it works to the detriment of us. And I agree wholeheartedly with the custodial management thing. In fact, I go further than the provincial position myself. I believe in extending the boundaries for fishing for Canada out to include the nose and tail of the Grand Banks and the Flemish Pass and the Flemish Cat. And so that's a step further even. I believe Mayor Han was quoted at one forum that I was at, almost to the point of saying, send out the gunboats and take control of it. Well, I'm closer to Mayor Han's position on where I stand on the offshore fisheries than I am to custodial management. Custodial management, I think, is where we have to go next to stop the onslaught and the rape that's taking place out there now, and to show Estonia and places like that in South Korea who have fishing rights off our banks that this is a load of bunkum, and it ought to be for the benefit of Newfoundland and Labrador. But down the road, if that don't work, you may well be into gunboat diplomacy again, and have to use some force if necessary to establish what your rights are. And I'd have no objection under those circumstances, if what is going on continues, advocating that approach.
Okay. Now, I know you're on a time limit. You're in a bit of a rush, so
no problem.
I'll just go quickly to the next one. This Royal Commission on Newfoundland's place within Confederation now, that's come up in the news a little while ago. What's your take on that?
I think it's very important in the sense that we've been in here now 52 years, 53 years part of Canada. We've all heard the news stories from Premier Grimes and Premier Ham out of Nova Scotia in the last number of years talking about equalization, clawback, and getting our fair share and so on. And quite frankly, we not only have had the door slammed in our face by Ottawa when it comes to a lot of these issues, the door hasn't even been opened to slam it. And that's the sort of treatment that many people in political circles who deal with this day in and day out have come to the conclusion that we're not getting a fair shake. Contrary to what some people in other parts of Canada might have you believe, that Newfoundland is not a net contributor, we feel we contribute much more to Canada than we get back from Canada. But when you're talking to federal people, and Ottawa in particular, who are not only at a distance geographically, but sometimes at a distance in their mind or what they're prepared to get their mind around, you have to give them hard and fast empirical evidence to justify your case. And that's exactly what the Commission is geared up to do. Vic Young, who heads it up, is a very knowledgeable, very intelligent man, and he's supported by two of the best we've had in the province, Sister Elizabeth Davis and Judge Jim Igliorite. So you've covered off your social elements, your judicial, legalistic elements, and then you got the business sense of someone like Vic Young, who I think will do a very thorough analysis of it and show the people in Ottawa that this is not hearsay, this is not Newfoundlanders and Labradorians whining. Here's the facts and the proof as to what we contribute, and here's what you give us back, and here's why we're getting a raw deal. And I think we had to go to that step to make it official, to make it a royal commission type of approach, because otherwise they just say that's politicians down there on the rock who's beating up on politicians in Ottawa, and it wouldn't get the attention and respect that the issue deserves. And I think Premier Grimes probably sensed that despite all the arguments we've had publicly and behind closed doors with the federal people, we get the short shift. And I think he decided that, look, we'll continue to do that piece, but we also need some hard and fast, concrete, official, royal figures here to show you people that we're serious about this. We don't think, we suspect, we haven't prejudged a thing, we suspect that we have not gotten our fair shake. Maybe the Royal Commission will prove us wrong, but I don't think, if anything, to pre-guess, shall we say, the Commission, I think the Commission will conclude that we have not gotten our fair shake, and also give us some recommendations as to how we can change it.
In the long run, most people, when they look at those kind of things, they say it's just on paper. In the long run, where do you think that'll take us? Do you think that'll be anything at all, or?
Well, you have to do it. It's a necessary exercise, because if you don't do it, you never know for sure what the facts and the figures were. And personally, I always like to speak from a position of facts and be informed, rather than, well, I think I'm getting the raw deal. I'd like to have the proof that I'm getting the raw deal. And once I know that, then you look at your options. And I mean, there's all kinds, there's an whole spectrum of options here. We can put up with the situation as we have it. We can make suggestions and try to influence the federal people to listen to the reports of the result. And ultimately, I mean, you can make decisions. Some people may think they're erratic and off the wall, that, well, maybe we don't want to be part of this game anymore if we're not getting treated fairly. So that's the wide spectrum you have. And it becomes a case, if that happens, Newfoundlanders and Labradorians would have to look at all their options and decide where are we best off. Okay. And so I think it's a process, and I think it's a necessary process, so that we all know what we're all talking about. And if these people don't want to listen, then we'll have to deal with that issue as to what our options are. We have options, and it's up to us down the road as a province then to decide which ones we want to take.
Okay. Well, we certainly thank you for stopping by.
No problem.
And we're glad you came in.
Anytime I can be of assistance to help out, and anything, any information or whatever, feel free to let me know.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stay with us for Off the Rack, the community events, and the BBS Playbill, all after this.
As members of CHAMP, we've had a close bond with the war amputees ever since we were kids.
We've learned about Canada's military heritage
from those who are actually there.
Now we can pass on their message through presentations, videos, and our own website.
Operation Legacy isn't just about remembering.
It's commemoration with a message.
That message? Never again.
It was our war. It is their legacy.
Off the Rack. This week, as we scanned our tape rack, we came across a tape of the removal of the powerhouse that was once located beyond the Scotia Bank. Let's look back to August the 23rd, 1992.
Good evening. Welcome to the community event segment of tonight's broadcast. I'm Rebecca Young. The winner of the St. John Central High TV Bingo on Wednesday, September 25th was Nita Strickland. The Family Resident Council will host the next TV Bingo on Wednesday, October 2nd at 7 p.m. Cards are $1 each or $6 or $5 and are available from any member of the Family Resident Council and are in most stores around town. Please support the residents at the Calder Healthcare Center, play a TV Bingo, and you could be the next $300 winner. The SCW has scheduled their fall sale for Saturday, November 23rd. We will have more details later. The UCW will be having their fall sale in the fire hall on Saturday, November 23rd. We will have more details later. Anyone interested in helping to canvass the town on behalf of the Canadian Diabetes Association, please contact Bernice at 886-2950. Are you interested in doing IBE? We are trying to determine if there is enough interest for a full-time program in the Burgeo area. Please call 886-3353 to register. Leave your name and telephone number and indicate if you will be attending full-time or part-time. If your group organization has an upcoming event planned, we will be happy to advertise it for you. Just call the BBS office by Wednesday of each week to have items included in this portion of our broadcast. That concludes this segment of tonight's broadcast. See you next week.
BBS Playbill. Tune in on Tuesday for a rebroadcast of Pansy's Garden. Try your luck on Wednesday by playing Family Resident Council TV Bingo. Following the bingo, we will have a short video entitled Save Energy, Save Money by the Eco Team, the Home Diagnostic Specialists. Join Pansy and the gang for 2 stories, a craft, and lots of fun on Saturday morning at 11 a.m. on Pansy's Garden. And I'll be here again next week with This Week in Review. Please stay tuned now for entertainment from the Sand and Sea Festival with music by Route 480. For This Week in Review, I'm Marie Rose. Good night and God bless.